Hello, everybody, and welcome to NoCoders Office Hours, episode number 196. I am your host, Tanya. We're here with my partner in crime, Juan. He's going to be answering lots of bubble questions this evening, and then our members, Harsha and Jonathan and Lachlan. And so we'll go ahead and get started. But if you haven't seen office hours before, what it is we hold a Zoom session 6 times per week, and we invite our members on, and they can ask us any bubble question they want, and we do our darndest to answer it. And if you would like to ask us your bubble questions and see if we can help you get them answered, please do sign up for office hours at pronocoders.com. Let's see here. Harsha, do you know if Ritesh is coming tonight? Or this morning, I guess.
Yeah, I will get confirmed within some time.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with the Felix team. Do you have a question this evening? Jonathan or Lachlan?
Sorry, I believe Lachlan has a question if he's there. Maybe he's muted. Regarding Zeno, I believe.
Yeah, I've got a Zeno question, but not a bubble question.
Got it. I could try to help, but I've never even been in Zeno before. So, well, but I did mention to Eli, I tagged him in on the question if you're talking about the same one.
Yeah, pretty much. That's all good. I'll just wait till he gets back to me.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's one of the live sessions that we're actually planning for Eli to go live and do a session on Bubble and Zano soon. So I'll start getting more familiar with it then.
I was going to say if we do have some time to maybe cover some basics on custom states of elements, I would appreciate that if anyone else is keen for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I will pull up. I've been working on something recently. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Working with data in Bubble.
Tony, sorry for interrupt. Ritesh is not going to join. He's not feeling well. Thank you.
Oh, okay. No problem. Did you have questions then, Harsha?
No questions.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Here we go. So I started working on the curriculum of a course about working with data in Bubble because I think it's missing. And the first part is storing data, which you're probably familiar with: data types, option sets, and external databases. But then there's displaying and moving data around on the page. And this is where custom states comes in, right? So we have several things that can store temporarily in your app, content types, and then actual content of those types. Custom states being one of them. But you'll start to notice there's some things about the content and the storage of all of these things that they share in common. For instance, a data type, you have the fields, and the fields will have a content type, and then it can either be a single thing of that content type or a list. And then the qualities of that I won't go into because you're more advanced than what I was planning this course to be. Then option sets, right? All of them start with the display, right? The biggest thing of an option set is how is it going to be shown on the screen. But then they have attributes, which has a content type and can either be a single or a list, right? And then for external databases, it depends on the database, but essentially they're all, what's the content type? And is it just one thing or is it a list of things? When you're working on the page, similar things are happening. A page can have a content type, but it can only have a single thing of that content type. Groups on the page, it can be drawn anywhere on the page, and it has a content type. If you wanted to, it's optional. Same with page, it's optional. Whereas Your data types, it's optional to have fields, but when you have a field, it's not optional. You have to select a content type, right? And then repeating groups, you can have a content type, but you can only have a list. You can't have a single, right? Even if the list only has one thing in it, it has to be a list that's served up in a repeating group. So custom states are the same thing. On any element in Bubble can have a custom state, and you have to specify the content type. You cannot leave it blank, and it can be either single or a list. The thing about its data qualities in comparison to data qualities of these other things is that you set what it's going to be. You can actually just click into any element, right? I could set it here, just go here and add a new custom state, or I can set it on the page, add a new custom state. And when you do that, you just name the custom state and you set its content type and you specify whether it's a list or not, right? Some elements have specific states that can only be set by particular workflows and accessed by particular workflows. So this has to do with the elements that you would pick up on, say, like a plugin, right? So some plugins will be in the form of an element that you place on the page, and they automatically, as they're working, store their data in states, right? And then how you reset it is using the expression, I'm in the custom state, using an expression that leads to a list of things. So to modify rather than replace the current custom state. So let's just do some custom states here. So let's add a custom state to the index. We'll make it of type, we'll say number, of type number. And it's just one number. It's not a list. So if I want to set this number, I have to do it in the workflows. And I can do it either by placing a button on the page and then adding a workflow to do it. So I come to the element actions, I set the state. The state is on the index element. And then I can say number, and I can enter a number here. And the number can be entered dynamically. It doesn't have to be hard coded in, right? So if I'm trying to keep the count of things that a user is doing on the page, I could use this number here, and I could refer to this number, and I could say, I want to increment it by 1. So then I can go to the custom state on the page, and I can add 1. And so now what I can do is if I go into the page, right next to here, I can display this custom state just so we can see what's happening. And so right now, oh, it's messing up because I'm in the wrong page. I need to be in a different page. Here, and text. So I can create the custom state right from here. I can say this page is where I want to put the custom state on the page. 99.999% of the time, I want to keep my custom states on the page level because it makes them easier to find. And then I'll just do I'm just going to count the number of times I click the button. Oh, I never set the other one. We'll call this add one. And this will be so every time I click, it adds one. And
Awesome.
now I can use the state to do whatever I need it to do. So if I'm adding one, say, let's say I'm adding the number of items that I want to buy, I'm counting up here. When I get to 10, I click the buy button, and now I can go create whatever I need in the backend workflows using this number as a reference.
So it's essentially like a endpoint for triggers to update elements.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just little bits of data that you're going to, or sometimes not little bits of data, but it's data that you are storing that's temporary, right? Just during the session, because if I refresh the page, it's gone.
Cool. So very important for like front end apps and stuff on the same page. Yeah.
Yep. But the fact that it disappears on refresh is something that is important, right? Because I can tell you how it can be created, how it can be edited and deleted, and then I get down to this point, is it persistent? And no, it's not. The only time it's persistent is if you set the state on page load. So if I go here and say, okay, when the page is loaded, I want to go ahead and set the custom states number to 1. So now when I preview, it'll already be set to 1. And so I just keep adding to it from 1 instead of from 0, right? So that's the only way that it persists, because if I refresh now, it'll go back to 1.
Awesome.
Whereas if you need it to persist beyond a page refresh, then you're better off working with URL parameters instead.
And that would be like slugs, for example, or?
Yeah, so URL parameters beyond slugs, because you can set, I think the limit is like generally 1,000 characters for a URL. So you have quite a bit of room to use URL parameters to kind of determine what things are showing up on the page or sending information from one place to another. So in Bubble, one of the things that we will often do is we'll set the content type of the page to user, for instance. And so then anytime I navigate to this page, Bubble is going to require that I send a specific user into the page. But sometimes I want to send this this number into the page as well as the user. And for that, I could use URL parameters. So I can create another button here. Add to URL. And then on here, I can go, I would say, go to the page custom states, and I can send the current user, right, to the page, or I can send any other user, and then I can send more parameters to the page, and I can say number is custom states number, right? So now if I preview, I can add, and now if I just take, oh, I can't preview. Juan, you're not paying attention, are you? You didn't stop me.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You're fine. So I have to go to the page. I have to add a user to the page to begin with. So when page is loaded, I'm going to set the states, but I'm also going to reload the page. Now go to page, custom states, and send in the current user, but only when current page user is empty. Let's see if that works. Yeah, I'm not logged in as a user, but I have an ID, so I think it'll work. So I'm just going to take this URL parameter off. So remove the debugger from the page so you can see I'm going to add a whole bunch of numbers here. And then when I add to URL, it's going to add this number as a parameter up here. So now I know that the number is 14 from previous, but it reset the number on the page. So I can refresh this page and the number won't change. It'll stay up here in the parameter. That makes it persistent, in my opinion. Not as persistent as storing it in the database, but persistent in terms of being able to move the data around.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Makes heaps more sense.
Yeah. Awesome. And then in addition, let's see, so we talked about those. There's also parameters that you use to send information into the backend workflows from the front end. And they are also single or list with content type. And they persist even beyond the users. So far, everything in this list here that's not in the database, displaying and moving data. So far, all of these things only last as long as the user is using the app. When we get to parameters, the parameters that you send into the backend are persistent even after the user is not on the page anymore. And then APIs, formatting as text and arbitrary text, and formatting as JSON safe are all things that I want Eli to flesh out for me because he knows them much better than I do. But
No, that's cool. I'd like to have a look at this if possible when it's done. But
Yeah,
I with my last help from Pedro, I've had to use custom states in the backend workflow, and I just haven't completely understood the context. So that's helped a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I don't think custom states exist in backend workflows though, only in front end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. What else can I tell you today?
Anyone else have?
It's just you and Lachlan. Harsh, I guess Ritesh is not feeling well, so he didn't come.
Oh, cool.
And Juan is here, so you can ask him lots of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I've just been trying to smash out that calendar and the SSO that Pedro's helped us with. So yeah, I just had some questions about backend workflows and custom states, which you've covered. But besides that, yeah, nothing really major is coming to mind. I thought maybe the Flexbox editor, I'd need to ask more on that, but it seems, to be honest, pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Isn't it awesome?
It's so good.
I had someone in one of the Facebook groups today say that they were going to revert back to the old responsive engine because they were upset that it was the funniest thing. They were just upset the way that the new responsive engine would not change the element on the page, the image element on the page, to be exactly like matching the aspect ratio of the picture that he uploaded.
Yeah.
It was like,
we asked an issue about that specifically, but I think that was even outside of the Flexbox. But I don't know. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. So I was playing around with it actually, and I will stand by my opinion that I don't think it's a good enough reason to revert back to the old responsive, but I'm using the old responsive at the moment, right? So I just drew this image on the page, right? And actually I'm going to make it closer to 1:1. So And then I'm going to upload a picture that's not one-to-one. And it automatically adjusts, right? And so then you can click to keep the element proportions as the page is resized, which I think my page is fixed width at the moment anyway. And that works. And that looks fine. But I think it's so much better because I drew this element on the page and I have basically the control over like the minimum width for responsive purposes and control over the element proportions. And I suppose I could change it here, but I just think if I upgrade to the new responsive, it will still do it if I'm fixed, if both things are fixed. But I just thought it was interesting because playing around with it, make the layout here column, and then make this here. Now I can make it not fixed width. I can say the minimum width, I can put it in percentage and say like 25%. And then the maximum, I can say I don't want it any larger than say 30%, right? Or I could even leave it at 25%. So no matter what,
maintain the ratio.
Right. And then I can keep the aspect ratio fixed, but I can change the aspect ratio here. I think this was the part that he might not have seen. It's like I can change this. So I can say, okay, this is wider than it is tall, probably by twice. So I can say 4 or 2 to 1. Right? It's a little bit off. So I could say 3 to 1. Could even do 1.5. No, it doesn't take 1.5. Doesn't take decimals, only integers. So let's see here. So maybe 4 to 3. Like I can play around with it just with the controls here. So I was pretty happy with it. Let's see, let's try 9 to 4. That's right. So 9 to 4 seems to be about right for this one. But then I feel like I have more control with it in the new responsive.
And if that was a dynamic image with different aspect ratios, it wouldn't be able to change that image, would it? It would just upload that image to that.
Yeah. But that's actually the same, like in general. So he was actually talking about statically uploading an image, which I actually
a set image,
rarely do. But you're gonna have the aspect ratio. Like we had a whole issue with it in one of the apps that I was managing, and this was just a rookie mistake of mine last spring, is because it was a very image heavy app where they were going to use the same image uploaded by the user in several different places. And so in all of my mockups, I was just using whatever aspect ratio of the image element drawn in the mockup that would look best with the rest of the design, instead of focusing on maintaining the same aspect ratio for the same picture that was going to be uploaded in one place, but then shown in multiple places. And so I kind of learned one of the best practices is if you have users uploading a picture and you plan to show that, say, like in the same picture and reference it in several different places, then it's a good practice to make sure that your aspect ratio is maintained in all of those image elements and that it's the same throughout the site. because
Yep.
it gets very annoying if you don't know what your picture is going to look
Responsive
like.
wise,
Yeah.
yeah, it could be difficult. Yeah.
So,
Cool.
but we also built something really cool. We used Copy Extended and made it so that we would force them to choose the view of their picture in the correct aspect ratio. So that way the user didn't have to like go and crop their picture before they uploaded it. They could
Interesting.
upload the picture and then they could see a view of it and they could move it around or change and crop it, the view that would be
It's got
seen.
like a square, like a shadow around it, you mean, for where it crops?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And was that a plugin or was that, how did you manage that?
Yeah, so Copy Extended is a plugin. I think it costs like $25.
Yeah, because I mean, we'll need that for client-specific branding, so I might make a note of that one.
Yep. Yeah, when
Copy
you
it is extended. Yep.
Copy Extended. Yeah, I'll go play around with it because that might actually be a cool like Sunday session, like we did yesterday. I know it was your Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was awesome. I really like, even though it was a little bit painful to learn that lesson, it was also a good lesson to learn. So.
Yeah, I can see that being really useful, like for heaps of applications. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be able to use that resource because it's such a popular platform. So I did have a quick question regarding those custom states. When you said you were sending like a user information through, so if I was using an external database, essentially what would be happening is I'd authenticate the user, and I'd post and get, if I'm authenticating through say Xano, I'd post to Xano, get an authentication token. I'd then store that in a custom state to then throw through between pages to change which data is getting access from the external database. Is that kind of how you'd set it up?
Yep. So I wouldn't store it in. I mean, you could store it in a custom state on the page. The problem is if the user ever clicks refresh, he would lose it. So I would store it instead in a URL parameter. Either that or in the database. The database would probably be the safest.
Yeah. Just for page loading. Yeah.
Cool. So just as a,
yeah,
against the user.
I mean, users will pretty much leave their URLs alone, but sometimes they get crazy and they'll do things, and you can't protect the URL from the user, but you can protect the database from the user. So it probably storing it as a temporary thing in the database would make sense.
And what if I wanted to store it in the browser? How would I do that?
Oh, like on a cookie?
Yeah, so that way it's like, whilst it's valid, they can that device or that browser is authenticated.
Oh, do you have an answer for that one?
No, I think it is not possible for now from Babel's side.
You can't.
Wouldn't we just have to use the database?
Yeah.
Like if each user has a field or something.
Yeah, and maybe creating another database object that can be like token or Xano or whatever, and you will keep this completely private, only visible in the privacy rules, only visible maybe for the app admin or even only for the current user. Is this user? Yeah, like this. Yeah. So and yeah, only.
So we wouldn't store that against the user? Oh, okay, yeah.
Role is admin. All right, user is logged in. Then they can view it, and then.
And your rule?
In the data type itself, we'd probably put like an owner.
Yeah, perfect. Related type user.
Type user, and then we would have the token itself.
Maybe, and I'm not sure if you will need access token, refresh token, expiry date, to refresh the token each 5 minutes or okay. So you will need this kind of fields
potentially.
Too, like,
yeah, I was the app an API I was using the other day needed that. So
And
potentially,
you will
but
need
that's
to,
pretty easy. We could just add the fields for that, right?
And on privacy rules, you will make not visible for anyone, and for user, like the current user or owner, only when current user is this token user owner. Is this user? Is current user.
Is current
Let's
user.
log in.
Where is it? There we go. Like that.
And maybe you can have in the header or in something in a reusable that will be present. So you do the flow only once and not a lot of times, where you validate the expiration date of the token. So when the expiration date of the token is greater than current date time, refresh the token. But you must schedule an API backend workflow. Don't do it on the page because the token will be exposed. So you will want to only trigger it from the backend. So in your backend, you will refresh the token or retrieve the token. So if it is not expired, you will retrieve the access token to the user. If it is expired, it will refresh the token and then retrieve the access token.
Interesting. Okay. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. I do need to look at backend workflows a little bit, sorry, just to completely understand it, but yeah.
Backend workflows are awesome.
And I guess we could use that authentication token that we've got, and we can then obviously use that to authenticate the API, so it knows that's basically like the input to know which user data to display on the page. Cool.
Did you say you needed more information on backend workflows?
Well, like you said before, I understand that they sort of happen independently of what the user's doing, and I've had to use it to in relation to APIs a bit, but I don't quite understand like the need for referencing the back end versus the front end, and maybe some scenarios where that would be applicable.
Sure. So there are 3 different types of backend workflows, and then you can also do custom events the same way that you would on a front end workflow page. So there's the API workflow itself, there's a recurring event, and there's a database trigger event. And so the recurring event, I almost never use this because
limitations,
the limitations of it,
based on the plan.
Yeah, based on the plan and things like that. So like if you're on a just you can't use backend workflows in practice at all on a free plan anymore. And then on a paid plan, on the personal plan, you can't use recurring events for less than a frequency of 30 days. So if you use like a weekly recurring event, you have to upgrade to the like $100 something plan. And I call this the bubble ignorance tax, because you can do the exact same thing in an API workflow that's just set to be recursive.
Yeah, and also even if you are paying a plan like the highest one, they are like daily, monthly, if I'm not wrong, and yearly or things like that. But for example, if you need it, I don't know, bi-weekly or I don't know, every.
We just did a recursive workflow in Ben's app for every hour in a regular API workflow. So every hour from here until forever, as long as he's paying for that plan, that workflow will run, right? And it's not costing him anymore. So I think, so I almost never use the recurring. Also, you set the frequency of recurring on the front end, not in the back end, which is a little weird. And it's not like what Juan is saying, it's not at all flexible. So it exists and it works perfectly, and I'd never use it. I almost always use workflows or database triggers here.
Yeah.
So the API workflow, this is where parameters come in. So you can add a parameter that this workflow is expecting or is optional to this workflow. So let's say I want to know I want a list of items, and I have items here. So item, right? And I can say it's expecting a list, and I can leave this optional unchecked, which means when I schedule this API workflow to run, it would automatically ask me for the items to send in, right? And this is what I was talking about here with the parameters. So it's just a vehicle to get information from the front end to the back end workflows. You can have the content type single or list. And then the way you set it is when you schedule the workflow to run, but from the front end, right? And so this one is just a demo API workflow. Now, what do I want to do with the items that are being sent in here? So let's say that someone's been on the front end page and they picked a list of items, and now I want to take that list of items and add it to an order. So I can come in here and I can create a new thing. The new thing will be an order. And I want to, maybe that's the only thing I want to do for now, is just create the order. Maybe I can set the owner or something like that. And then here, I want to copy a list of things. And the list of things I want to copy are type item, and the list to copy is items, right? But now I need to modify those items to go into this order. So I could make changes to a list of things, and the type of things will be item. The list to change would be the result of this step. And then I can set the order to be the result of step 1, right? So now I have to schedule this workflow to run. And I can go to and I think it's a little bit silly that I so often will have to create a page and a button just to run one workflow.
Yeah, that's one piece I didn't really understand, is how that worked, but yeah.
So go ahead.
Sorry, maybe something in addition to Tonya to keep in mind. It is like a small tip, but yeah, be careful when naming the parameters on the API backend workflow, because if you change it, you will need to. I mean, this will not work for the other steps. You will need to select. Can you change the name to show it, please?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, like item, for example, but maybe items to work. So you will need to update this. Do you see that it turns red? And also in the other pages where you are triggering this workflow. So yeah, sometimes you can forget that, and you will need to update. A lot of things. I don't know why, but it should be like simple.
And you can't undo that? Oh, okay, I undid it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then all I did was I created a button so that I would have a way to trigger this. So I'm going to come down to custom events, and I will schedule the API workflow and this one, and you'll see it's expecting me to send in a list of items. So I'll schedule the date and time. This is really the powerful part of the API workflows, is you can schedule this into the future. So when the user is on the page and they click that button, if you don't want to send them a reminder until the day before their appointment or something, you can use this dynamically to set exactly when to send them an email or something like that. Whereas if you were just to click here and send an email, it's going to go right as they click the button. So being able to schedule things into the future is the biggest part of why to use API workflows. So I'm just going to send in all of the items here. I don't even know if I have any. Let's go look. Nope. Type of thing, item. I don't even have a name on the item. So we come here.
So maybe another thing in addition to Tonya is that as you can schedule them, you can store the number of the ID of this API workflow that is scheduled in the future, so you can cancel it. For example, you are scheduled to send an email to the user, I don't know, to be sent in 1 week after they leave their data on your page. But you, I don't know, maybe the user unsubscribed from the list or whatever rule. You can cancel this backend workflow that you scheduled with the number of the workflow. So this is nice too, because this gives you more flexibility.
Yeah.
Also, you can have conditionals on them, like to run each step or the workflow itself only based on conditions. So
so I'm going to click this button. It's going to kick off this workflow, which is going to schedule the backend workflow that I created. And that's going to send in the list of items as a list into this workflow. It's going to create an order first, and it's going to copy all of the items I just made, 1, 2, and 3. And then it's going to make a change to those items that it created to belong to the order that I just made right here. So if I go back and into here and I preview, we go into, these are the items that exist now, and I don't think we have any orders. So after I click the button, I will have 6 items instead of 3, but they'll be 1, 2, and 3, right? So 2 sets of 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll have 1 order with those 3 items in it. So click. Yeah, it's brand new. I love the agency plan. This is a bubble bug again. I'm too lazy to report it.
Leave that to the other people.
Yes, exactly. Ben was like making fun of me. He was like, "You never report the bugs." I'm like, I know. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here because the order will be the first thing created. So run. And so now, you can see it created the 3 items and it created the order. I didn't update the order. I just updated the items to have the order number in there. So to debug that, I would just go back to my backend workflow here, and I would add one more step here, which is changes to the results of step items set list to the result of step 3, right? So then if I go back here and I run, and I come in here and I have 12 items because it did all of them again. So all of from here up. If I go into the order, now I have the 6 items in this order. But I could have scheduled that to happen tomorrow instead, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just a bit weird because it's like you need to sort of retroactively update it in the workflow. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I could have waited and create order after I had made the copy of the items. So I could have created order and then I would have still had to have like made the change to the list of items, but I probably could have condensed this to 3 steps instead of 4. But
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
No, that's way clearer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
Maybe something about the custom workflows.
The
Let's say,
events?
yeah, related. For example, sometimes you want to do something in your backend, but you want to don't be public or never can be triggered from, yeah. So these custom events can be only triggered by your actions itself of your app, not from the outside.
I've never actually used custom events in the backend before.
Yeah, because maybe the more usable or the more common ones are the other ones. So I wanted to maybe add this clarification there that maybe in some cases you will want to use them.
Yeah, because you can pass, you can't pass parameters. Actually, that's a good thing to add to my list here as custom events.
And I also use them sometimes to keep like actions separate to prevent the execution of the flows that sometimes are not in step 1, step 2, step 3. They can be they can be being triggered at the same time. So you can have a separate custom event at the end and trigger it from a result of a previous step or things like that.
Yep. I'm trying to think if there was any use case with this one that we made where we would put it in a custom event, but I don't.
Maybe you can change the order only. Yeah, you can after the list of items are complete. You do the change to the list of items or of step 3.
Make changes to a list of items. So in here, make changes to a list of items and then find the items that are created in this one. How would I do that? So I copy a list of items here, but I can't send a list of items into the custom event. I can only send. Can I send a list?
Okay. No.
No.
But one sec. Let me think. But can you click on step 3? Okay, but they don't belong to nothing that we can pass or but maybe the step 4, for example, or
no, because I have seen like, I mean, a 5-step API workflow is not too many, but I've seen some with like 10 and 20 different steps in the same workflow. And you know the app to which I'm referring, right? The flow.
Yeah.
So, and that was like definitely would have helped to have custom events to kick off different custom events for different needs.
And maybe keep them more organized so you can find things easier and debug it easier. And
yeah, that's definitely true because that's what I did. I don't think I've ever been so patient to do it since because deadlines and other things. But if I go I really wish Maria would fix this. Come on, Maria.
Maybe she is viewing us.
It's this one. So in this particular app, this was my demo app to get accepted into AirDev, actually. And I used custom events to keep the workflows very, very clean. So you go into these workflows and you can see this is kind of messy and not really helpful, honestly, because like this is very clear, but this is not so clear because it's got a bunch of information in it. But in this one, I used, I think it was this one. Yeah. So you can see I kept all of my conditions out of the names of my workflows. I know you can rename workflows, so you don't necessarily have to do this to keep it clean, but you can see I used custom events and I broke everything out. And I was like, if it's an alert, then I named it alert. If it was changing the database, I named it database, and so forth. So just as an organizational tool for when, like if somebody ever comes back behind you, or if you're building the app, but you don't plan to maintain it yourself forever, right? If you plan to hire people to do it in the future, just things like that.
Awesome.
Anything else before we wrap it up for the evening?
No, I'm just thinking, I think that's for me anyway, pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel pretty comfortable with everything else just thus far, but I'm sure I'll have more questions soon.
Perfect. Well, then we will go ahead and wrap up episode number 196. Next one will be 197, which will be tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time. If you haven't yet joined office hours, please go to pronocoders.com and sign up today.